Hi, this is Rich Uzdowski with Ball State's Center for Middletown Studies High School Consolidation Oral History Project. The date is March 11th, 2015, and today I'm here with Doug Roebuck, and he was nice enough to say he would sit down and give his thoughts and opinions on the recent consolidation. So, Doug, if you wouldn't mind starting us off by just pronouncing your name for the viewers.
Doug Roebuck.
Okay. And for some more background, could you give us your age, your address here in town, what you do here at Ball State, any hobbies, anything you'd like to add there?
Okay, I'm 62 years old. I live at 4601 North Gishler Drive in Muncie, which is in Holloman Village, northwest side of town. I teach in the math department. I'm an instructor of mathematical sciences. I've been at Ball State for 11 years. I like history, I like genealogy. Those are some of my interests here. And I've been in education for 41 years now. So I've been around education and schools for a long time.
Okay. Well, let's jump right in here with the big question. What are your thoughts and opinions on the consolidation here in town?
I spoke at one of the forums last year. They had 3 or 4 forums people could go speak at. Mm-hmm. And I spoke for the consolidation. That was my own personal opinion. I thought economically, schools in Indiana are getting cut all the time as far as budgets go. And it's true here in Muncie. I mean, they've lost state funds for a couple of years, and it's definitely a problem. And it just seemed like with the numbers in both high schools, it didn't make sense anymore to me to have 2 separate high schools.
Okay, so you saw it, maybe we could say, as a financial imperative.
Right. I thought we could save money by consolidating. Another thing I mentioned last year was some people were concerned that Muncie Central would be too big of a high school. Mm-hmm. But when you actually did your research and compared a consolidated Muncie High School with other schools in the North Central Conference, which Muncie belongs to, mm-hmm. Muncie High School this year is probably only the 3rd or 4th biggest one there. Richmond, Anderson, and since Lafayette schools came into the North Central Conference this year, I think Muncie's about the 5th largest high school. So it's not even an issue as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Most other schools in the North Central Conference are bigger than Muncie. That was one thing I raised, and then another issue I raised was I have a daughter that's a freshman here at Ball State. Mm-hmm. I believe it was when she was a senior. She wanted to take a physics class or something, advanced physics class, and at Central they only had seven or 8 kids showed interest, so they didn't really offer that class that year. And that was another thing. If you consolidate, hopefully you'd have enough students that would make a class like that and offer some of those upper classes that, mm-hmm. You can't do it a smaller school there. You just don't have the staff and so on. So those were the 3 things I talked about. I just think economically it made sense. I think, athletics, there was a lot of discussion about how are kids going to get along. And I still think, it's proven true here that the kids got along fine. I think a lot of the parents were more upset than the kids were.
Okay. Now, you said there were a couple of points that you tried to make when you spoke at the forum. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like your voice was heard in the decision-making process?
Yeah, I think so. But also, I emailed some of the school board members, but I really think so. They listened there because everybody had a chance to speak. I think the meeting I went to, this was at Northside Middle School because mm-hmm. it was one of the few I could make the meeting, and probably had 20 different people. There were some from Southside, some pro for keeping the Southside open and so on, but there were just as many from the North Side there. So, I think my voice was heard. Yeah.
Now, going off of that, do you feel like your voice and what you spoke for kind of went along with what a certain neighborhood or side of town had to say?
I would say no. I think there's definitely, it seems there's a division between North and South and Muncie, and between the 2 high schools. But I think a lot of that goes back to, again, the parents. The kids aren't worried so much about it. And I think the reason I spoke was not to keep Central High School central. In fact, I probably would have been happier if they just named Muncie High School.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is there, and I thought it was just the best thing for all kids, not just kids on the north side or kids on the south side, is the way I felt about my opinion. So I don't think I really represented like a north side view or anything like that.
Okay. Going back to what you said when you said that it might have been better if it was just called Muncie High School,
Mm-hmm.
where are you going with that?
Well, Muncie Central is the north side high school.
Mm-hmm.
South side was a high school. And I think the one place they missed the boat on the consolidation was just to call it Muncie High School. Because Muncie Central's always been denoted as, quote, the north side high school.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's one thing I would have done is rename it, just make it Muncie High School, period. All of Muncie. I mean, they have a slogan this year of, bringing Muncie together and so on. But I think that's one thing I would have changed if I had the power to do it. I think just Muncie Central still denotes north side, whether it is or not,
So literally consolidate the identity by taking away the name of a previous school.
Well, that's what they've done, I mean, as far as Southside no longer there, it's they've taken away that identity as far as I'm concerned, so.
So would you have been on board with, there was a gentleman who spoke, if I remember correctly, one of the town hall meetings, and he said to rename the school, give it a new mascot, and then bring the colors together. So make the high school colors purple for Central and then
red.
Take the red. Yeah, red.
Might have been very ugly colors, but I think, it would have been a smart way to do it. I mean, one school did lose their identity. I mean, Central people still have their identity.
Yeah.
To make it fair, I think that's one thing they could have thought about, whether it's a new mascot, new colors, or I know Anderson went through that same thing a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure what they ended up doing. I still think they have their red and green, which was Anderson High School, I think. I'm not sure what they did.
Okay. Do you think that your community identity played a role in how you approach the consolidation issue?
No, I really don't. I don't think it mattered where I live, how I felt about it. I'm not a graduate of any school here. In fact, I made that statement. I'm not a graduate of any Muncie school, so it really doesn't affect me. I don't have allegiance to Central. I don't have allegiance to Southside. I have no stake in that, argument there. So it really didn't matter to me. In fact, I think I made the comment, if the best decision would have been to close Central and send them to Southside, I'd have been happy with that. I mean, I think, you had to go to the bigger school, and apparently Central was the bigger school. But if Southside would have been the better school, better choice, close Central, I would have been supportive of that. I think, you want the best for kids. I don't care what building you're in. That's kind of another issue. I don't really care that much about it. So, like I said, if the Southside would have been the choice, oh well, Southside's the high school.
So you're basically a pure pragmatist.
I don't know about that.
All right, going back to the north side, south side divisions.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say that they've been around, whether literally or symbolically and metaphorically, for a long time in Muncie. And there were several speakers at the town hall meetings that voiced concern that if the students from the two sides came together, there'd be tension, there might be fights, there'd be bullying.
Right.
Where do you think that fear came from?
I don't know if it's just loss of identity. I think a lot of those people that spoke about that were Southside graduates or lived on the south side of town. I don't know if it's loss of identity. I really didn't have any fears about that. My daughters were both involved with sports from the time they were 4 years old and 6 years old. And a year ago at a swim meet, Central was swimming Southside, and those kids were cheering for each other. It wasn't like Southside and Central swimmers were out against each other. It was really surprisingly supportive of each other. And I think, clearly that's the way it ended up here. I don't think there have been major problems on this school year as far as, kids, I know some kids transferred out, which I think is their choice. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's been a big issue. I think it was more the adults, and I think it probably goes back to where they grew up, where they lived, or they graduated from. And if I were in their shoes, I might have felt the same way.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was real to them whether they believed it or not. But I think surprisingly there haven't been issues with kids this year not getting along. I think those kids wouldn't get along regardless of what school they're in or whatever. And I have heard nothing from students or faculty about, any divisions this year. I think it's a non-issue, really.
Okay. What role do you think a high school plays in a community's identity?
Well, I think it's very important. I think it's it's a key. It's central to that community there. It's an identity. But I think academically, it's important. For many different reasons. I think economically, you get companies come to Muncie. They're going to look at the schools. Where they're going to locate. Where their people are going to live at. It's based on schools, and I think athletics draws people together. So it's a drawing point again. That they're cheering for one team. But I think it's very central to the identity of a community.
That's interesting that you say that, because there's actually a quote or a passage in the original Middletown book that touches on what the Linds noticed to be this trend that athletics brought people from the upper class and the lower class together, business class, working class together. You might not like each other on the streets of Muncie.
But sports, you get along, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned some of the effects that you've seen or heard about in terms of what consolidation has done, but can you speak more on that specifically?
I think academically that there's more offerings this year just because you have more teachers, you have a bigger population, so there's courses that weren't offered probably at either school that are offered this year. Certainly they just had an article in the paper this last week about the gymnastics team. Central might have had 5 or 6 girls last year, and Southside had like 1. So this year I think they had 12 or 13 girls on this gymnastics team, which just competed in regional. So I think there's been a lot of positives out of that, and I know they've had money to quote. One thing I heard from some kids is at the beginning of the year it was kind of false, and they were trying to push it, to get along here. It's kind of a rah-rah. Kids weren't buying into that. Kids were kids. They got along with the kids anyway. It was just kind of some of the events they had here, some of the kids weren't happy about it. They just thought it was kind of artificial.
Interesting. I haven't heard about that. Do you have any more to speak of on that?
No, I talked to some kids there, and they just said, well, I don't know if it was really bonding experiences or what, but they said once was fine, but sometimes it just felt like they overdid it. Let's bond again, let's bond again, let's bond again. And we don't need that, it was too much.
Which kind of goes back to what you were saying, that it's the parents' generation right now is more worried or concerned than the kids themselves are.
I think the kids generally got along fine with it. I'm sure they'd be, and I think one thing I'm happy about is this year the kids can choose which diploma they get. If they get which I think was a very smart choice to give kids, do it 1 year, and because I know several of the kids that went to Southside and now go to Central, and I don't know what they'll choose, but it's their choice. I think that was a great option for kids to give them a choice of diplomas. So
I completely agree. I'm going to take advantage of your expertise, let's say, as a educator of educators, we'll say, and just can we get your perspective, put your professional hat on, your perspective on all of this? How do you see this consolidation fitting into bettering an educational system, or just the trajectory of the Muncie Community Schools educational system?
Again, I think it gives kids more choices. They've offered some programs this year. I think there's some college programs in there, where you can get college credit. AP classes, I think there's more AP classes. I just think some of those possibilities didn't exist before in 2 separate schools with smaller numbers. So I think that's been a plus, for some kids that I'm not going to say get ignored, but we don't worry so much about the capable kids. We worry about the kids on the other end of the spectrum here. So I think it's kind of nice that they're looking out for the top end kids too here. I think that's a great chance to improve everything around.
Okay. This next question will be switching gears a little
Okay.
bit, but how do you see the consolidation fitting in with the economic trends that we see happening in Muncie? We'll say over the last 3 or 4 decades, with the factories closing, people leaving, and the parallel declining student population.
It still continues to this day. I think it was going to happen irregardless of when it happened. It had to happen with declining numbers of students. They've closed, I don't know how many different buildings here in Muncie over the last couple of years, and I think it had a major impact on what happened there. I think you had to consolidate just financially, if for no other reason, because the numbers just weren't feasible. You can't keep 2 big schools open and have them, half full or whatever, and it doesn't surprise me that happened. I think that's one of the reasons that that's one of the causes of it. It was, if it didn't happen this year, it was going to happen sometime here, just because the enrollment goes down, people lose jobs, they move away. The population's down, the economic opportunities are not good. I think it was a matter of time as far as I'm concerned.
There have even been people who have argued that it should have happened 5 or 10 years sooner.
That I don't know. I think one thing that Muncie needs to do is have a vision here for where we are the next year. What are our goals? 5 years from now and 10 years from now, and every year look at that, because it seems sometimes we're just reacting to the things that happened this year. Let's be forward looking and say, okay, where are we going to be in 5 years? Now, you can't hold somebody to that because nobody knows the answer. But I think you could come back every year and say, okay, now do we want to revise our vision? And do that every year. So we've got a plan here for the future. What's it look like? It could have happened probably 5 years ago. That I'm not sure. I'm not sure where Muncie was as far as what they were looking at. Numbers, schools, numbers of students. But I think, it wouldn't have surprised me. It might have been a better thing if it happened 5 years ago. I'm not sure about that.
So you're advocating for Muncie to be proactive rather than reactive?
I think that's very important, yes. I think you have to have, some way to look ahead here, not always focus on the past and just react to this immediate thing that's happening right now. You definitely have to have a forward-looking view there.
What advice would you give to children growing up in Muncie today who are living in the city as it is now and going through the school system as it is now?
Take advantage of the opportunities the schools offer you. You're never going to be in high school again. Take advantage of the opportunities given to you there. I think you're missing the boat if you don't. There's so many things here that the schools offer, academically, socially, and athletically. Take advantage of those opportunities because you're never going to have those again.
Okay. And take advantage of your position and perspective again here, because it's kind of unique in the sense that contrary to what a lot of Ball State professors tend to do when they don't put their kids in the public school system, or they might be afraid to do so because of the reputation. You have put your daughters.
2 daughters both in Central or in Muncie schools. I know several people that live not too far from me that send their kids to Delta. I'm going, every school has problems, it's not just city schools that have problems, I think you can go to any county school and if you look at it hard, you're going to see they have some of the same problems that we have. And I see no reason to send my kids to another school. I mean, I think Muncie gives them a great opportunity, and we pay taxes here. We live here. They're going to go to Muncie schools as far as I'm concerned.
So do you think it's fair to say that Muncie schools, the reputation Muncie schools get, isn't as bad as they actually are?
I'd say that, yeah. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about what goes on. About 5 years ago, I think it's when they had the rape case, and everybody was just all, oh, Muncie Central had a rape case, and that was real controversial. But that happens all over the place. That was one time in how many years? How many times has that happened since? None.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things happen here, but they happen at county schools too. I've heard several kids say, yeah, you go to Delta, they're going to be out drinking and partying and smoking pot, probably more than kids at Central. So that's the kids' perception.
So pros and cons to either.
Yeah, I think there is. Sure.
All right. Well, that concludes with all the formal questions I had for you. But I wanted to give you the floor to add anything or just say anything else you might want to say.
I just hope that we get a forward. I know they're looking for a new superintendent this year. I hope they get somebody that's got some experience. They definitely have to have experience with budgets because that's going to be crucial with the state funding. Muncie's looking for a business manager again. That's going to be a key position for somebody. And I hope they actually have that forward-looking view of schools here. Where do you think we're going to be in 5 years? And every year come back and look at that. I think it's something that's needed here instead of just looking backwards or looking at the present and reacting to the present. We need to be forward-looking here.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you, Doug.
Thanks
for talking.